Ron tried to backtrack, telling me how these were just a few bills and that he was working on repaying them. I asked him why he had not just repaid them already since he was bringing in income every month from his job. This is when Ron confessed to me that he had been out of a job for the last 4 months. I was shocked by this revelation since he had been going into the office once a week as usual for the last 4 months, and the rest of the days, we would text while I was at the office, and he was supposedly working from home. I asked him how this happened and why he never told me about it. Ron opened up about how his boss was an a-hole and had gone back on his word, pushing for Ron to go to the office every day since the company was taking on more clients, and Ron needed to have more face-to-face meetings. However, Ron felt it was disrespectful, and after a disagreement with his boss, he was sacked. Ron went on to tell me how it was not a big deal and that he would get a job in a jiffy once he started applying. My eyes widened in shock as I asked him what the hell he had been doing for the past 4 months if he had yet to apply for a job. Ron replied that he was taking a break for his mental health and that I should not blame him for any of this. I told him that even if he had lost his job, it didn't make sense why he was not able to pay bills, considering he apparently came from a wealthy family. Ron told me how he did ask his parents for help, but they had refused. He went off about how his parents clearly favored his older sister more and how unfair this was. I felt like my entire relationship with him had been a lie. The illusion he had portrayed of himself was starting to crumble. Clearly, he was not wealthy, which explained why he depended on me to pay his bills while his unemployed self continued to buy luxury items and post about them on social media. I told him very firmly that I loved him, but this was not something I signed up for. I explained that I knew exactly how it felt to be broke, and I had worked really hard to come out of it. I was not going to let anyone drag me back to that place ever again. I informed him that if he didn't agree to change his ways right then and there and show me through actions, I would be out of his house with my things that very evening. I guess seeing me this angry really got through to Ron. He immediately apologized and sat down to discuss ways to deal with his bills. I told him that he needed to sell his car, pay back all his credit card bills, and stop buying luxury items for a while. Ron tried to refuse, telling me how people were going to judge him and how his friends would make fun of him. I told him that I honestly didn't care about any of that because he had mounting debts that needed to be resolved first. He then asked if I could help him pay off some of the loans, but I refused, letting him know that this was his responsibility. I agreed to continue paying our monthly bills and taking care of daily expenses, but I made it clear that until he took proactive measures to lessen his debt, I would not feel comfortable discussing a future with him. Begrudgingly, he agreed. Over the following months, Ron took proactive steps to address his debt. We put his car up for sale, and since it was a sports car, we got lucky because the sale yielded enough to pay back his loan and even keep a little extra to pay down other bills. He cut back on unnecessary expenses and focused on repaying his credit card bills. It was a challenging time for him since he wasn't used to cutting back on anything, and there were moments of frustration and doubt. But I encouraged him to work hard to regain control of his finances. Eventually, Ron managed to clear a significant portion of his debt, and I felt proud of him for trying. We discussed him getting a job, but Ron opened up about his plan to start his own business. He told me that he had an entrepreneurial spirit and wanted to explore that. I was vehemently against this, as I am far more risk-averse than Ron. I knew he could be very fickle-minded at times, and I wasn't sure if he had the determination to concentrate on building a business. However, he had worked hard to pay off his debt, so I didn't argue much. During this time, Ron proposed to me, which took me by surprise. He told me how he had listened to all my demands and had paid off his debt, so now we could concentrate on starting a family together. I told him yes because, at the end of the day, I did love him, and all I wanted was for him to keep working hard just like I did so we could both build a life together. He informed me that his parents were unaware he would be proposing, so he was a bit nervous to tell them. When he called to inform his parents, they told him that even though they were happy for him and would support him, they really did not expect that he would end up with someone like me. On the other hand, my parents were happy for me. We had a small wedding because I did not want to spend too much money and mess up our credit after Ron had just come out of debt. My parents graciously stepped in to help with the expenses for our wedding, and I took out money from my savings to contribute as well. Ron's contributions, on the other hand, were minimal, despite his family's supposed wealth. When our guests marveled at the elegance of the event, some even assumed that Ron and his family had probably footed the bill. Throughout all of this, Ron remained silent, never correcting their assumptions or acknowledging the truth. I couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment. It was disheartening to see him bask in the false praise, especially knowing that he had been unemployed for months and hadn't contributed financially as much as one would expect. His parents also shamelessly never corrected anyone, and maybe out of guilt, they decided to pay for our honeymoon. This was unexpected, but we accepted since otherwise, we may not have gone on a honeymoon at all. After our wedding and honeymoon, Ron worked on starting his own social media agency, just as he had decided. He planned to work with brands and hire influencers. This is undoubtedly a lucrative business, but there are hundreds of agencies like this, and it's difficult to stand out. I would constantly come home to him grumbling about how he couldn't secure an influencer for an event or that he had lost an influencer who was not up for negotiation. Also, brands seldom worked with new agencies, so it was really difficult for him to find brands that trusted him enough to sign up with him. As a result, the business never earned any income, and I would sometimes beg him to go back to finding a proper 9-to-5 job, even though it wasn't as exciting. Ron would get pissed and tell me how he needed time and that he was going to make it. However, no matter how many events he attended or the influencers he met, his business was not successful and was definitely not dependable. Meanwhile, I was getting frustrated with being the sole breadwinner and working every second of the day that I was awake. I would come home to more work, the dishes were never cleaned, the laundry was piling up, and the dog needed to be taken for a walk. On top of this, he would wait for me to cook for him while he would tell me about all the bills that needed to be paid. If I ever brought up anything about my work, he would tell me how glad he was to have left his job since he couldn't be as stressed about work as I was. This really irked me because I was the one paying for everything with my stressful job while he was off partying every day at various events. I slowly started to resent him more and more. We would do nothing except watch TV together, and it was starting to feel suffocating. On weekends, I would sleep a lot because I was constantly burnt out from working the entire week. If I ever told him to help me out with chores around the house, he would tell me how starting a business needed his 100% energy and that as his partner, I should be more understanding. Last month, on top of all this stress, I found out I was pregnant. Now, I have always imagined being pregnant and having a baby, but I don't know why, but I felt like this is not how I would like to start a family. I mean, when you're bringing a child into this world, you want them to have a stable home and 2 providing parents. However, in our case, I was the only one providing, and he was doing nothing to contribute to the household.